Well, today I'm going to check out Star Trek Ascendancy from Gale Force 9 in 2016. The base game has the Federation, Klingon and Romulans. Heard good things about it. And it's a big game, and it's hard to start. It's hard to know how to store these big games. It's bigger, it's wider than, it's about 2 times as wide as standard bookshelf games. It's hard to know how to store it, but got a couple other big games here I'll be checking out at some point too. I've checked out some Gale Force 9 games. Specifically, they have a great Firefly board game. And I have liked what I've seen as far as what Gale Force 9 produces as far as components and trueness to the universe they're representing. Here's a description on the back of the box. Boldly go where no man has gone before. Command the Federation, Klingons, or Romulans. Your decisions shape the galaxy. With strange new worlds you discover and what paths you chart, create a different map every time you play. New life, new civilizations. Encounter alien cultures as your starships expand from your world to encompass the galaxy. Colonize, conquer, and convince new planets and cultures to join your civilization. So it seems like a 4X game. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Develop new production facilities, research labs and cultural institutions. Research new technologies, achievements to further expand your civilization. Alert battle stations. When diplomacy fails, conflict is inevitable. Order your fleets to engage, improve your ship's weapons and shields, and dominate your rivals in epic space battles. Your civilization's phase in your hands. Here's a good overview of the components. And we got nice miniatures for ships and kind of resource miniatures here. It's a big box, got a lot of components. Rulebook, a lot of tokens, system disks. They do these space lanes, which you build your universe through these connected lanes to systems. Fleet cards, reference cards, exploration cards, turn order cards, trade agreement cards, advancement cards. It's got 90 plastic ships, 9 fleet markers, 30 control nodes, 63 resource nodes, 3 command cards. It says about 1 hour per player, we'll see. It's 3 players, age 14 and up, and there's also a lot of expansions you can get for different races and I think ships as well, and different miniatures. Box is presented well. Of course, Federation with different officers of the different series, different commanders of the different series. Got your Klingons, got your Romulans. Age 14 plus, 3 players. Credits: game design Sean Swigert, Aaron Dale, graphic design Katie Dillon, approvals coordinator Peter Brzkop, design director John Kowalski, producers Peter Simonovich, John Paul Briscotti, 3D design Charles Woods, acknowledgements shown here. Special thanks for feedback and playtesting, and then playtesters. A lot of components, and the box is more than big enough to fit all of them, and maybe it's a bit too big. It could maybe fit them a little more snug. But it gives you options for how you're going to store it. And the copy I got didn't have like a like a storage system with it. And I think that's probably the case. It doesn't usually come with one. But correct me if I'm wrong. So I use like a craft box to store the various counters and miniatures and the space lanes. Components: first, the rulebook, 28 pages, modern colors, examples. It's quite involved, so in this case, in the rules section, I'll kind of talk about the concepts at a high level in the organization, and then I'll mainly demonstrate the rules during the setup and play section. Here's all the space lanes, miniatures and counters and dice and various markers and resources. Each of the 3 players gets a command console card here, and it's got these nice trackers. I like that they each have different styles for the different empires, and then also for the Federation. Each of them you have trackers for the weapons, hit roll and upgrade cost, shields, upgrade cost and modifier, place to put your supply of tokens in there, and indicators of their motivations and approaches. For instance, Federation Prime Directive may never invade planets or colonize pre-warp inhabited systems, explore strange new worlds. Take 1 culture when you draw a civilization exploration card or discover a new phenomenon. Then the Romulans. Suspicious, whenever you receive a trade agreement, exhaust it immediately, refresh it in your next round's upkeep as normal. Cultural superiority. Take 1 culture when you complete an advancement picturing a culture token. Then the Klingons, death before dishonor. Klingons may never retreat or surrender a planet, ever victorious. Take 1 culture when you defeat 3 or more ships in a battle. So some good thematic representations there. And then there's system disc and phenomenon disc. On the back they have indicators of, these are the home worlds, and then these are the unexplored ones. When you flip them over you see what they are. So you have the home worlds, Romulus for the Romulans, of course, Earth for the Federation, and Kronos for the Klingons. And at the bottom of the various discs, you indicate the number of space lanes that can be attached to it, and these are space lanes of various lengths that would attach. So Romulus, for instance, can have 4 space lanes. Then it also indicates what resources are available there. Romulus has 1 culture, 1 research, 1 production, and then similar for Earth and Kronos. The various discovered systems have a variety of resources. For instance, this one has culture and research. This one has production. Some have this red indicator, and that's a hazard indicator. And when a ship comes into that system, they take into account their shield bonus, and then if they roll the shield bonus plus, if they roll a number equal to or higher than that, they lose a ship. And these are the places where you'd put the various resources that are developed. And then there's also phenomenon discs. So these are systems with the worlds on them, and then there's these other discs that are phenomenon, and they are neutron star, McAllister Nebula, Stellar Nursery, Eagle Nebula, and a pulsar. The map is developed during the game by having systems and phenomena connected by these space lanes. This is a space lane die, which is rolled to see the length of the space lane, and they're in lengths of 2, 3, or 4, and there's several of those. And they would connect, the systems. There's turn order cards, 1 through 10, dice for combat, Ascendancy tokens, track how dominant each civilization is. First player to achieve 5 Ascendancy tokens wins the game. Warp tokens indicate how far your starships can travel at warp, and indicate where your starships entered warp. Starbase tokens allow you to build ships and commission fleets. They also fight in space battles and make it more difficult for for a rival to attempt hegemony. Each star base you control also increases your commands by 1. And these are player turn cards. Each player has a set of these. And one side is the building phase, the other is command phase. Shows all the building costs here on the building phase side. And on the command phase side, it shows all the commands. The fleet markers, they're very well done. They come in these stands which indicate which fleet number. For instance, that's Fleet 1. So there's 3 Federation, 3 Romulan, 3 Klingon. These are the fleet groups, and the different fleet markers represent these fleet groups. And there's different, on each side, different types. You're only allowed 3, but here, for instance, Fleet 1 can be a Marauders, or kind of a generic fleet. Battle group. Assault, or a kind of generic fleet. That's for the Klingons. For the Klingon Marauders take 1 production for each rival ship destroyed by this fleet. Battle group. This fleet may re-roll to hit rolls of 1 in space battles. Assault. This fleet may re-roll to hit rolls of 1 in planetary invasions. Then Romulans. One side we have Science, Battle Group, and Mining. Science. When this fleet braves a hazard, only roll for 1 of its ships. This fleet may brave the hazard of a phenomenon they occupy without exhausting command. Battle Group. This fleet may re-roll 2 hit rolls of 1 in space battles. Mining. This fleet occupies undeveloped system or phenomenon. You may use 1 command to take 2 production. This may be only used once per turn. And on the flip side, kind of a generic fleet, generic fleet, generic fleet. Federation. You have Science, Colonization, Diplomatic. Science. This fleet braves a hazard, only roll for 1 of its ships. This fleet may brave the hazard of a phenomenon they occupy without exhausting a command, similar to what the Romulans have there. Colonization. On your turn, you may discard a ship from this fleet and disband this fleet to immediately colonize an undeveloped system without spending a culture. Diplomatic. You may re-roll your hegemony roll in systems this fleet occupies. And then on the flip side, got Battle Group, Battle Group, or Battle Group. You can have a maximum of 3, but the number you can have is limited by Ascendancy. If you have only 1 Ascendancy token, you can have 1, but you can choose from any of these for that one. And then well done miniatures for starships for the Federation, Romulan, Klingon. Control nodes for the same. Control nodes are placed on systems planet to mark which civilization controls the system. And then resource nodes, production, research, culture, and then the matching tokens for those. And command tokens indicate how many orders you may issue in your turn. Then we have advancement cards. Each civilization has a unique deck of these, and they show cultural and technological achievements. So for instance, for Federation, Class 4 industrial replicators. When you colonize a system, you may immediately develop a production node at no cost if the system's capacity allows. Romulans, a couple examples. Taldian security forces and planetary invasions. Research nodes you control Roll an additional die to hit. Klingon, a couple examples. Covert saboteurs. On your turn, you may exhaust this card to exhaust another player's military advancement with whom you've made contact. We have exploration cards. 4 different options. There's Virgin, where you discover new worlds. Crisis, discovery, civilization. Some examples here. Discovering a world. Crisis. Game Masters of Transkelion. It's got some original series kind of graphics too. The crew of your starships are abducted and forced to fight in gladiatorial games for the amusement of the masters. Discovery, children of Tama negotiations. The Tamarians speak solely in metaphor. Dealing with them is exceedingly difficult, requires patience and trial and error. Civilization, discover a war capable level 2. Talk about the weapons, hit roll, shields modifier, hegemony resistance, and warp capability. You can develop up to 2 resource nodes in priority order, place 2 warp tokens on the system, making it as a warp capable independent civilization. Then it's trade agreement cards. Each civilization has 3 trade agreements that they can give to their players to represent peaceful commerce between their civilizations. Each trade agreement you receive from another player increases your production each turn. Instead of discussing the rules in detail here, I'll show them in setup and play. I'll kind of show the high level here. It's the rulebook. Just kind of show the concepts. Game setup. Command console. Resources. How many ships and resources they start out with. Command tokens. Advancement decks, home system, starting ships. The suggested layout. Separate phenomenon disks from the planetary system, and then they each get their own homeworld. Game area. To win the game, there's 2 different ways you can win: becoming the most ascendant in the galaxy, or by militarily dominating your rivals. Ascendancy victory. At the end of a game round, a player who both controls their home system and 5 Ascendancy tokens wins the game. Ascendancy tokens may be purchased at the same time in your turn with 5 culture tokens. Then supremacy victory. At the end of a game round, a single player controls 3 home systems, one of which must be their own. That player has dominated the galaxy and wins the game. There's ties. The player who controls the most systems wins. Terminology, trade agreements, how to establish them, trade profits. Yeah, they throughout here they show images of various Star Trek series, which is nice. How you withdraw from trade agreements, betrayal. So the game round consists of 3 stages: initiative, execution, and recharge. Initiative stage. Players spend resources to influence galactic politics and seize the initiative in the game round. Player who spends the most resources gets their pick of the turn order cards for the upcoming round. Players may only spend resources if they have made first contact. The execution stage. Players take their turns in order decided by the initiative stage, building up their civilization, researching new projects, upgrading their weapons and shields, and issuing commands to the starships. On the turn, players may also spend 5 culture to ascend. Recharge stage. At the end of each game round, there's a recharge stage. Each recharge stage consists of victory check, generate resources, refresh cards and tokens, add warp tokens, 2 ships at warp, and resupply phenomenon with the research tokens. After the recharge stage, another game round begins. Then it talks in detail of these different stages. Initiative stage, execution stage. So in the execution stage you have the building phase where you build ships, colonize the system, build resource nodes. Command research, you can discard projects, finishing projects, warp token advancements, command advancements, upgrading weapons and shields, some special rules, then you end the building phase. Once you start the command phase, you may not spend resources to build, unless a specific special rule allows you to do so. Ascending is the only exception. Ascending is an exception to that. Then command phase. Number of commands, you can move ships and fleets, initiate space battle, invade a planet, attempt cultural hegemony, commission a fleet or starbase, launch new advancement projects, and activate special rules. When you issue a command, you exhaust the command token to show it's been used. You flip it over to show it's exhausted. So in the commands and movement, there's impulse, warp, entering rival territory, hazardous systems, and then building a galaxy, placing new space lanes, abandoned space lanes, placing new system disks, placing new system disks at warp, fixed versus floating systems, destroyed systems, making connections, some additional rules, discovering phenomenon, and then further study those. Discovering planetary systems, exploration cards, pre-warp civilizations. That you discover warp-capable civilizations, independent civilizations. Then how you take control of warp-capable civilizations. Space battles. There's battles in the same sector, score hits. Starbase support in battles. Attacking from multiple sectors, retreating. Blocked retreats. Combat continues. The first strike, winning a space battle. Battles with more than 2 players. Planetary invasion. Scoring hits, taking casualties. Invasion results. Successful invasion, collateral damage, total annihilation. Repelled invasions, surrendering invasions, combat. It continues, capturing research nodes, capturing star bases, invading uncontrolled systems, civilization tech levels. The level is unmapped to the weapons hit roll, shields modifier, and hegemony resistance. Cultural hegemony. Hegemony of warp-capable civilizations. Seizing star bases and research nodes, commission fleets and star bases, forming a fleet, fleet types and strengths, number of fleets, adding and removing ships from fleets, disbanding fleets and space battles, launch projects, utilize special rules, and then recharge stage, victory check, extermination, resource generation, trade profits, exhausted trade agreements, resources from advancements. Maintenance, refresh cards, refresh trade agreements, and warp tokens, and resource tokens, and then optional rules. You can, to accelerate it, get simultaneous first turns, starting resources, starting projects, starting advancements, random turn order, wild culture, easier ascension, then advanced rules, mystery turn order, random galaxy, unrestricted trade routes, humble beginnings, focused research, then a couple sample turns. Then we'll get to setup and play. Getting into setup and play here. Here's the game setup. First of all, you take the 3 homeworlds, Romulus, Kronos, and Earth. Put them about 18 inches apart from each. Each home system gets 3 ships, and each of the 3 resource discs for culture, production, and research, and then a control indicator. They each have the 3 fleets set up, fleet cards there, and you have the fleet marker on each. The 3 trade agreement cards in each. You set, for each of the 3 players, you set the weapons to the hit roll of 5+, and the shields at the modifier of 0. Have 5 command counters that are face up ready to be used. 1 Ascendancy token. You have your advancement deck here for each one, and they each have a starting advancement cartridge they use. For Romulans, it's the cloaking device. Your ships have first strike in space battles during your turn. For the Klingons, it's disruptor technology. Your rolls to hit of 6 always score a hit, regardless of the rival's shield modifier. And the Federation has the universal translator. When attempting hegemony, add 1 to your die result. And each have 3 production, 3 research, and 3 culture counters. Then they each have 3 starbase tokens. And then you separate from the unexplored discs, you separate the phenomenon discs from the others. Set those aside. And then we also have the exploration deck and the turn order deck. You start off the turn with the initiative stage, and the civilizations that have made first contact in normal initiative stage can spend resources to bid to try to get some political influence to try to get the order they want in the turn. But since nobody's made first contact yet, we just randomly distribute them. And for 3 players, just using the order cards 1, 2, and 3. The Romulans will go first, followed by the Federation and then Klingons. In the execution stage, it starts with the building phase, and then you do the command phase. And for the Romulans, since it's their turn, takes 1 production resource to build a starship, so they'll do that. So build 1 ship. They'll place on Romulus, and they'll spend 1 production resource to build that, pay for that. Other things they can do are build production open sites, build research in open sites, build culture in open sites, colonize sector, or add research tokens to existing research. They don't have any existing research going on right now, so they can't do that. And they don't have any open nodes to build on, and they don't have any systems to colonize yet, so that's all they can do in the building phase. And then we'll go to the command phase. She's got 5 commands she can use. And the first thing she's going to do is launch a project. She exhausts the command by flipping it over. Take 2 cards. There's the Taldan Security Forces, helps in planetary invasions, or the Tal Shara monitoring posts. And she can only start as many as she has research control nodes, and since they only have one control node, they can only take one, discard the others. They'll start with the Taldan Security Forces. Put that in their research file. On their second command, they'll put one of their ships in warp. Take a warp indicator, move the ship off of the world, and then exhaust the command. For her third command, she'll exit warp. So she'll exhaust her third command. The space lane will go where the warp marker is. She rolls the space lane die to see how long the lane is. It's a 2. Puts down a 2 lane. And similar to the example in the book, I'm using the optional rule of having random galaxies where you mix the phenomenon disk in with the system disks. Now, randomly draw from that pile. And it's injury 8. Place it there. The ship exits warp and goes into that system. Newly discovered injury 4 has one capability of 1 culture resource and 1 research resource. It makes the system, there's no hazard he has to overcome. So he draws an exploration card. And it's where no one has gone before, so it's a untouched planet ready for colonization. Got 2 more commands to go. She's going to have another ship enter warp. She'll expend her 4th command to enter warp, so she'll enter it here. And then, so she'll exhaust that command. Has 1 left. On the 5th command, she'll have it exit warp, so she rolls for the length of the space lane. It's a 4. Put down a 4 space lane at that location. Take a random disk. It's Delta 4. And by exiting warp, that's her last command. So it's exhausted. Has its ship exit warp on Delta 4, which has 2 research nodes. And there's no hazard, so they didn't have to roll to avoid hazards. Similarly, there weren't hazards on injury 4 either, otherwise they would have had to roll for those. And you draw, there's no hazards, and they has to overcome. Draws the exploration card. The children of Tama negotiations. The Tamarans speak solely in metaphor. Dealing with them is exceedingly difficult. Records patience in trial and error. Remains in play to colonize this system. Roll a die and add your ascendancy. If your total is 4 or more, you may colonize for free. Otherwise, you may not colonize this system this turn. It's got an ascendancy of 1, so I'll roll the dice. And that's the end of her execution stage, since she had 5 commands used. Then the next is the Federation. Similarly, in the build phase, the Federation will build 1 ship. And also for their building, they can build 1 starship for 1 production. Still do. Put that in their homeworld. In their homeworld, they are allowed 4 space lanes, similarly to the Romulans and Klingons as well. No more building they can do. Then they'll do their execution phase. They'll spend one command to initiate a research. Take 2 from the pile, and they can only keep 1 since they only have 1 research node right now, but they'll choose which one they want to do. There's class for industrial replicators. When you colonize a system, you may immediately develop a production node at no cost. Or Starfleet Diplomatic Corps. When your hegemony attempts are successful, taking control of the system does not require spending additional culture. He'll go with the replicators. So I'll have that to work on. That's 1 command. They'll do a warp. Have ship going to warp. That takes 1 command. Have it exit warp, which will take another command. Put on the location. Take a random system, which is Tau Sigma 5, but it's got a hazard. Goes on the system, but he has to roll for the hazard. He doesn't have any shield bonuses, so if he rolls, it's a hazard 6, so if he rolls a 6, the ship is lost. And his ship is lost, unfortunately. Removes it. That's unfortunate. 4th command, he'll have another ship do warp. Hopefully this one will have more success. So 1 command was to enter warp, which he did. And then his last command will be to exit warp. And when you exit warp, you roll for the length of the lane. So 4. Put it here. Draw a random system. It's a phenomenon. It's a stellar nursery, but it does have a high hazard. Ship goes in there. He doesn't have any shield bonuses. If he did, he'd adjust his score with that. But if he rolls a 4, 5 or 6, he loses the ship. He's fortunate he didn't lose the ship. That was his last command. And if he would have had a shield bonus of +1, he would have made that 4 into a 5. So if he would have rolled a 5 or 6, he would have lost a ship instead of a 4 to 6, but he didn't have any shield bonuses. He did survive. Since he survived the phenomenon hazard there, he gets the research token. And in that turn, he lost one ship that went here. The other is here, so now he steals a total of 3 ships. Then going to Klingons, similarly, they'll do the same approach. They'll buy a ship, pay 1 production for that. And then in their commands, they'll start a research. Couple options: covert saboteurs, or adaptive cloning device. You'll go with the cloning device. So that's one command exhausted. And they'll do a warp. And then exit the warp. Say E4. See what he finds. Sigma time of the 4th. And these are when a system isn't connected by 2 paths, it's floating, which means it can, if another system gets a path that can reach there, it'll connect there, and it can kind of swivel so that it connects. For instance, if they got a 2 on this one, it could swivel here and be connected. So right now it's a floating location. So he took 1 command to initiate the warp, 1 to end the warp. There's no hazards there. So he discovered that system, so he draws an exploration card for the Sigma Tama 4. Crisis, a neutronic wavefront. Spanning more than half a dozen light years, neutronic storms travel at warp speed, leaving a swath of radiolytic isotopes. You may either exhaust command and place all ships in the system at warp, or all ships in the system must brave the level 4 hazard. He'll try to brave a hazard. Needs to roll less than a 4. He's good, survived it. And he'll do another warp. For 1 command. And then he'll exit the warp for the last command. See the length of the path. 2. See what sector is on the end of that. It's Excalibur. It's got a hazard. He doesn't have any shield bonuses, so he'll just roll and he sees if he gets a 4 or higher. He's okay. Turn an exploration card. And it's a untouched planet that's perfect for colonization. That's into that execution phase. Then we finish the turn by doing the recharge stage. Check if anybody has a victory, and nobody has the victory yet. Nobody's been exterminated. Resource generation. Each player takes resource for each resource node they control. And right now they each control their home world, which Each of their homeworlds produce one production, one research, and one culture. They don't have other systems controlled yet, so that's what they get. And you add that to their accumulated resources. There's no trade profits, there's no exhaustive trade agreements, there's no resources from advancements. Refresh cards and command tokens. So you turn all your command tokens back up to enabled. Refresh trade agreements, there's no trade agreements currently. Add warp tokens to ships at warp. There's no ships that are in warp right now. Add resource tokens to the phenomena, so I'll add replace the research token on that phenomena. Then you go to the next turn. Initiative stage bidding, first turn. That'll be Federation and then the Klingons. So the Romulans go first. So in the build phase of the execute stage, they can build ships or build more productions if they have systems with those. They don't control any other systems yet to build nodes on. They have to control them first, so they can't do that. Or they can colonize a system. Or they can commit research. Like for instance, their military would take 3 research, and you can only add 1 at a time to get that. I'm not going to do that. But if he expends he can upgrade his weapons. If he expends 4 research, he can upgrade it. He'll do that. He'll take 4 research. And then he moves his weapons up once. Now he needs a 4+ to hit instead of a 5+. He'll also expend 1 production to build a ship. Put on his homeworld. That's the end of his build phase. Then the execute phase. He has 5 commands to use. He'll use 1 command to form a fleet. He'll take 3 of the ships here. He'll choose the battle group option for the fleet. And then I'll put the fleet marker up here to indicate that. The battle group may re-roll 2 hit rolls of 1 in space battles. That's good to have. Then he'll have this ship go into warp. For another command. And then he'll exit warp. See how far the space lane is. 4. And a 4 allows, he's got a floating one there, so he can either connect it over here or to the Klingons, and he'll decide to go connect it to the Klingons. And that's currently occupied by the Klingons. So he's got he'll use 1 more command to have a space battle against the Klingon. And they both roll, and if he gets his 2-hit die roll or better, he hits him. And he needs a 4+ because he just recently upgraded his weapons. And a Klingon needs a 5+ because he hasn't upgraded his weapons. And they go until somebody either retreats or is defeated. So the Romulan will go. Hits. But the Klingon will also go. He misses. So the Klingon is removed. And the Romulan wins. And if their last command, they're going to exhaust the command to try to invade the planet. And if they score more hits and there's controlled nodes on the planet, they take control of it by the invasion. If there were defenders there, they would have to eliminate them, but they also already got rid of Klingons that were there, who hadn't had control of it anyway. But so if they get one hit, then they'll take control, is my understanding. And their 2-hit roll is a 4+. So they succeeded. And therefore they get to put a control node there. If there were developed nodes there, they could also attack, but there are no nodes there for the defensive attack. If it were a warp civilization, they could try to take it over by a cultural hegemony. And to do that, you exhaust command and spend a culture, and then you'd roll a die and add your Ascendancy. If the total is higher than the number of structures on the system plus the Ascendancy of the player who controls it, you capture it. But that's not the case here. So that's the end of their turn. Hopefully that gives you a sense of how to play it. That's Star Trek Ascendancy from Gale Force 9 in 2016. It's a 4X game, obviously in the Star Trek universe. I quite enjoyed it. It's not as complicated as some games, but it covers a lot of territory, and it's true to the universe. And it's neat that it covers aspects of the original series and also Next Generation and other Star Trek series, it seems. It's kind of all encompassing that. And I know there's a lot of expansions you can get for other different civilizations. The base game I've shown here is the Romulans, Klingons, and Federation, which is a good place to start. I really like the miniatures and the approach of having the map that kind of evolves as you play. It's fairly straightforward as far as, you upgrade your weapons, shields, you can develop different technologies. It's a little bit simplistic compared to some more complicated games like Exodus, Proxima Centauri, or games like that. But I think there's a good place for it's not simple, it's kind of moderate complexity, and that works really well in some cases. It's got enough going into it that you have plenty of strategy and tactics to work through. So if you're looking for a moderate complexity game that's got real good ties to Star Trek, I would definitely recommend it. Glad I have a copy of it. I might start trying to get some of those expansions out there. The combat is, very quick. And there's only one type of ship you have, so it's a little bit limiting, but by making it simpler that way, the flow of the game goes a bit long, so it's good that you don't have more complexity to make the flow of the game go longer. Explore systems, you can develop, and you figure out resources you're developing. If you want to do combat, or there's diplomacy to do as well. Glad I got it. Highly recommend it. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Thanks a lot.